Good evening, everyone. Today's video is on standard IV concentrations for hospitals. In this video, we'll talk about some of the frequently used IV medications that are used at the hospital, at what concentrations they come or they are prepared at the hospital, and we'll talk about their dosage range, usual dose or initial dose, and what's the maximum allowed dose, and to administer those medicines by the IV pump, what is the normally a standard IV concentrations that are used for those IV medicines for preparation purposes. So we'll talk about this thing here. It will be a very important video for the pharmacist and pharmacy students around the world, especially for the developing and underdeveloped countries, because in those countries at the hospitals, protocols like this has not been developed yet, and many of these medicines are not available there because of a pharmacist or the medical professionals not being aware of this. So this video can actually benefit the people of the world in the healthcare a lot, because of introducing those medicines into the hospitals and also understanding how to safely administer these medicines to the patients in those facilities. Basically, it can improve the healthcare of a country by improving the hospital's conditions, by implementing these standard IV concentrations for the hospitals. And it will be also very valuable video for the doctors and nurses, because they will also know what is the usual concentration and the dosage range for these IV medicines at the hospitals. And it will also be very valuable for the pharmaceutical companies, because many of these medicines may not be available in some countries, and they'll be able to find out what medicines they can introduce into the market and make some money by selling those medicines. So it will be also very valuable for product development or product introduction to the market for manufacturing purposes. So thinking all about this, I hope you will see the whole video from beginning to the end, and I will hope the pharmacy teachers, the professors at the universities will teach them or make the students study this whole thing for their learning purposes, because this is very important for their career, or if they want to improve the healthcare condition of any country. Why standard IV concentrations for IV medications are needed at the hospital? There are mainly three reasons. Number one, fewer calculation errors. Number two, fewer compounding errors. And number three, simplified communication between all disciplines. Because these three benefits are so vital, it makes mandatory for the hospital to have standard IV concentrations for IV medications. There are some abbreviations used in this protocol. Some of them are MAP, mean arterial pressure, PCWP, pulmonary capillary wedge pressure, PT, proton mean time, RR, respiratory rate, SBP, systolic blood pressure. For a medication order to be complete from a physician, the order should have these following elements: medication name, concentration of the medicine if applicable, dose, route of administration, frequency of administration, and indication for use if there is a PRN or as needed medications. And there are some Joint Commission standards for titration orders for IV drips, and those are initial or starting rate of infusion, dose time should be mentioned, incremental units, the rate of infusion can be increased or decreased, frequency of incremental doses, how often dose or rate can be increased or decreased, maximum rate or dose of infusion, and what is the objective clinical endpoint, for example, RAS score. Individual hospitals can have specific guidelines or directions to the nurses how to pause or discontinue these IV drips, and if they have to restart those IV drips again, the requirements for getting a new order from the physician. A hospital needs to distinguish its different units or areas of the hospital into different level of care or acuity of care levels. This is important because not every drip is suitable for running at every unit of the hospital, because the instruments that are needed for running that IV drip may not be available in that unit. So every hospital makes a level of care or acuity of care distinction, like what type of critical patients they can handle in what unit of their facility, and based on that the drips can be allocated, meaning like which drip can run at which unit of the hospital. And this is basically based on monitoring and documentation of vital signs and ECG, how frequently that is done in that unit and if that unit is capable of doing so. I am using a hospital's example for demonstration purposes, and the video should be used for educational purpose only, because every hospital should do its own study to make a protocol like this. And I am not going to read the whole detail of every drip on this protocol. I'm just going to mention the drip's name and highlight some of the important points here. So the first drip on the list is Altiplase drip, and Altiplase can be used for arterial occlusion per interventional radiology orders and for echoes machines, and the concentration that can be used for those purposes are 10 milligram in 250 ml bag, or 10 milligram in 500 ml bag, or 4 milligram in 250 ml bag, based on different physicians' orders. And there is a usual rate and a maximum dose for that purpose. And Altiplase can also be used for stroke, and in that case is compounded as 100 milligram in 100 ml or 1 milligram per ml, and there is a loading or bolus dose and the remaining dose to be infused for stroke. You can see that dosing on the protocol. Aminocapric acid can be used for active bleeding, and that also has a loading dose and a infusion, ongoing infusion if the physician wants. The loading dose is normally 5 gram and it can run over 1 hour, and followed by 1 gram per hour over 8 hours if the physician wants. Aminophylline has a bolus dose that can be made in D5W or NS, and that dose can be compounded in 100 ml. And the aminophylline drip is normally 1 gram in 500 ml, and there's also a initial dose and a maximum dose for aminophylline drip too. When amiodarone is used during code scenarios, it can be given as straight pull and IV push, and that dose can be 150 to 300 milligram IV push. In other scenarios, when amiodarone is used as a drip, it can have an order for bolus, and that bolus dose normally 150 milligram, but sometimes physician may want 300 milligram bolus. The bolus dose 150 milligram is compounded in 100 ml D5W bag, and if the physicians want 300 milligram bolus, then 2 bag of the 150 milligram can be run to make that 300 milligram bolus. And the amiodarone drip after that is compounded 900 milligram in 500 ml bag of D5W, making a concentration of 1.8 milligram per ml. And the rate for amiodarone drip is normally 1 milligram per minute for 6 hours, then 0.5 milligram per minute for 18 hours. After that, if the drip needs to be continued, is up to the physician. Andexxa is another IV drip which has a low dose schedule or low dose dosing and high dose dosing based on the indications. Is dispensed in empty bag, making a concentration of 10 milligram per ml from the supplies, and it is compounded in sterile water. And the low dose bolus is 400 milligram in 40 ml over 15 minutes, and low dose infusion 480 milligram in 48 ml over 120 minutes. and the high dose bolus is 800 milligram in 80 ml over 30 minutes, and high dose infusion 960 milligram in 96 ml over 120 minutes. Argatroban can be used for interventional radiology, arterial occlusion, or for PCI, and they have different bolus and drip rate for those indications. And argatroban can also be used for HIT, which is heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, and it comes from the manufacturers normally as a 50 milligram in 50 ml vial, but it also comes in a small concentrated vial which can be compounded to 250 milligram in 250 ml bag, but in both cases it makes a concentration of 1 milligram per ml for administration purposes. And you can see the different rates for different indications on the chart. Banana bag used to have 4 ingredients before: thiamine, folic acid, multivitamin, and magnesium, but nowadays 2 of the ingredients are taken out, so it only contains thiamine and folic acid. And there's also Angiomax or bivalirudin, and that normally concentration is 250 milligram in 50 ml, and there's also a loading dose and infusion dose for Angiomax. Bumetanide or Bumex drip can be compounded as a concentration of 25 milligram in 100 ml bag. Caffeine and sodium benzoate drip can be compounded as 250 milligram in 500 ml bag. There's another caffeine product, caffeine citrate, and that can be a concentration of 10 milligram per ml. Nimbex drip can be compounded as a concentration of 100 milligram in 250 ml bag. Dantrolene can be a concentration of 20 milligram in 60 ml. DDABP or desmopressin can be compounded as 23 microgram in 50 ml normal saline. And dexamethasone or decadron, if the dose is 20 milligram or higher, that should be infused over 30 minutes as a slow IV infusion. Dexmedetomidine or Precedex drip can be compounded as 400 microgram in 100 ml bag, or it also comes from the manufacturers as a vial, 400 microgram in 100 ml vial, which is a concentration of 4 microgram per ml. Cardizem drip or diltiazem drip is a concentration of 1 milligram per ml, and it can be compounded as 125 milligram in 125 ml bag, or a vial of 125 milligram can be kept to a 100 ml D5W or NS bag. Dobutamine drip normally comes from the manufacturers as a pre-made bag, and that concentration is normally 500 milligram in 250 ml bag. Dopamine drip normally comes from the manufacturers as a pre-made bag of 800 milligram in 250 ml bag. Doxapram or Dopram can be compounded as 250 milligram in 250 ml bag. Epinephrine drip normally is compounded as 5 milligram in 250 ml, and that's the standard bag. But in some scenario, if the patient needs this standard epinephrine drip very frequently, then the physician may want a high concentration, which can be 16 milligram in 500 ml, and that's only in rare scenario when patient is fluid restricted or patient needs the epinephrine drip change very frequently. In that case, they may want the high concentration epinephrine drip. Esmolol drip or Brevibloc drip comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 2.5 gram over 250 ml, which is a concentration of 10 milligram per ml. Famotidine or Pepcid can be given as slow IV push or continuous infusion. For the purpose of slow IV push, a concentration of 20 milligram over 5 ml or 20 milligram over 10 ml can be used. And when it is used as continuous infusion, a concentration of 40 milligram in 100 ml bag can be compounded. Phenoldopam or Corlopam can be compounded as a concentration of 10 milligram in 250 ml. Fentanyl drip can be compounded as 2500 microgram in 50 ml bag. It also comes from the manufacturers as a vial of 2500 microgram in 50 ml. In both scenarios, the concentration would be 50 microgram per ml. And fentanyl IV push comes in a syringe, and that syringe concentration is 50 microgram per 5 ml. Cerebrex or phosphonitoin for doses up to 500 mg can be compounded in 50 ml, and doses greater than 500 mg should be compounded in a 100 ml bag. Lasix drip or furosemide drip can be made at a concentration of 500 mg in 50 ml, which is a concentration of 10 mg per ml. Glucagon drip can be made at a concentration of 10 mg in 100 ml. And heparin drip comes from the manufacturers at a concentration of 25,000 unit in 500 ml bag, which is a concentration of 50 units per ml, and it can be D5W or normal saline. And the heparin drip for ECOS machine can be at a concentration of 4,000 units over 1000 ml bag or 4,000 unit over 500 ml bag. Hydromorphone or diluted PCA comes from the manufacturers at a concentration of 10 mg in 50 ml. Ibutylite IV piggy bag or Corvard can be a concentration of 1 mg in 50 ml, which is IV push or slow IV infusion over 10 minutes. Insulin drip comes at a concentration of 100 units over 100 ml, which is 1 unit per ml. Iron dextran infusions, normally the dose is mixed in a 1 liter bag of normal saline. Iron sucrose or venofer infusions up to 200 milligram are mixed in 100 ml bag of normal saline, and from 201 to 500 milligram doses are mixed in 250 ml of normal saline bag. Iron sucrose or venofer doses of 100 milligram or 200 milligram can be also administered as IV push. Isoproterenol drip or isopril drip can be compounded as 1 milligram in 250 ml bag of D5W or normal saline. Kcentra is compounded with the diluent that is given in the kit and mixed according to the manufacturer's guidelines in the package. Ketamine infusion for pain, the dose can be compounded in 100 ml of normal saline bag, and ketamine infusion for migraine headache can be compounded as two different concentration, 1 milligram per ml, which will be 250 milligram in 250 ml normal saline bag, or 4 milligram per ml, which is 1000 milligram in 250 ml of normal saline bag. Labetalol drip can be compounded as 400 milligram in 80 ml concentration, and that would be a straight pull into the IV piggy bag. Levothyroxine drip or synthroid drip is only used for organ preservation purpose, and that drip can be compounded as 400 microgram in 500 ml normal saline bag. Lidocaine drip comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 2 gram in 500 ml of D5W or normal saline, which is a concentration of 4 milligram per ml. Lorazepam drip or Ativan drip can be compounded as 100 milligram in 50 ml. Magnesium bolus doses can be 1 gram or 2 gram normally, and from the manufacturers they come as 1 gram in 100 ml bag or 2 gram in 50 ml bag. There is a separate kind of magnesium bolus doses of 4 gram or 6 gram, which is only ordered for the labor and delivery or maternal child unit for delivering mothers. That 4 gram in D5W 100 ml comes from the manufacturers as a pre-made bag, but if the dose is 6 gram for a patient, that can be given from the 20 gram of magnesium sulfate bag that's accompany that order set. This magnesium drip of 20 gram of magnesium sulfate in 500 ml of D5W can only be used at the labor and delivery unit, and this is the maintenance infusion if it is ordered for a delivering mother. Solomedrol for spinal cord injury, which is methylprednisolone. There is a loading dose and a maintenance dose. Loading dose can be mixed in 100 ml D5W or normal saline bag, and the maintenance dose can be mixed in 500 ml of D5W or normal saline bag. Midazolam drip or Versed drip is made as 50 mg in 50 ml concentration of normal saline, or it can also be compounded as 100 mg in 100 ml concentration. In both cases, it is 1 mg per ml. Midazolam IV push can be also given in the critical care areas. Mildinon drip or Pimacor drip comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 40 mg in 200 ml of D5W or normal saline bag. Morphine PCA comes from the manufacturers, or it can be compounded too as a concentration of 50 mg in 50 ml of D5W or normal saline. Naloxone drip or Narcan drip can be compounded as 2 mg in 500 ml of D5W or normal saline, which is a concentration of 4 microgram per ml. Nicardipine drip comes from the manufacturers as 20 mg in 200 ml of D5W or normal saline, which is called as a Cardin drip. Nicardipine drip also comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 40 mg in 200 ml of D5W or normal saline, and then it's called double concentrate Cardin drip. Nitroglycerin or Tridyl drip comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 100 mg in 250 ml of D5W. And a nitroprusside or Nipride drip can be compounded as 50 mg in 250 ml of D5W bag. Norepinephrine drip or Levophed drip, which is a very commonly used drip at the hospital, can be compounded as 8 mg in 250 ml of normal saline, which is a concentration of 32 microgram per ml. Octreotide drip or Sandostatin drip can be compounded as 1000 microgram in 250 ml of normal saline, which is a concentration of 4 microgram per ml. Zofran or ondansetron can be compounded in a bag of 25 ml or 50 ml D5W or normal saline when the Zofran dose is high and it needs to be given slowly. Oxytocin or Pitocin doses, the bags for the maternal child health or labor and delivery unit, can be compounded as 30 units in 500 ml of normal saline. In different facilities, it can be at different concentrations too, based on their protocols. Pamidronate or Aridia can be compounded in a 1000 ml of normal saline bag, or if a physician specifically mentions any particular volume of fluid to be mixed in. Pantoprazole can be given as IV push, or it can be given as a continuous infusion too, but basically there is not much need for giving as a piggyback. It can be given as IV push. Phenobarbital drip can be compounded as the dose in 100 ml of normal saline. Phentolamine may need to be compounded as bolus injections for extravasation purposes or continuous infusion for hypertension crisis. Phenylephrine drip or nusinersen drip is another widely used drip in the hospital, and it can be compounded as 50 mg in 250 ml of D5W or normal saline. That gives a concentration of 200 microgram per ml. Phenytoin doses can be compounded or mixed in 100 ml of normal saline bag. Potassium bolus doses come from the manufacturer as 10 mq or 20 mq per 100 ml of normal saline D5W or lactated ringer bag. There is another higher concentration of potassium bolus doses that come from the manufacturers, which is 20 mq in 50 ml, but that bag can only be used for patients with a central line because of potassium being higher concentrated in those bags. Potassium primary IV fluid infusion bags are different IV fluid bags that are carried at the hospital, which can be D5W, normal saline, half normal saline, D5NS, D5LR, different IV fluid bags carrying 10 to 40 MEq of potassium chloride per liter. Procainamide drip can be compounded as 2 gram in 250 ml of normal saline bag. Propofol comes from the manufacturers as a concentration of 10 mg per ml. Rasburicase or Elitec doses can be compounded in 50 ml of normal saline bag. Sodium ferrigluconate or Failicid doses of 125 mg can be mixed in 100 ml of normal saline, and 250 mg dose can be mixed in 250 ml of normal saline. Sodium chloride 3%, which is hypertonic saline, is a very crucial and critical med for the hospital. It's not very safe. The physician has to be given a specific direction of how many ml of this fluid has to be infused at what rate, which is normally used for hyponatremia, and the rate can be 25 to 50 ml per hour. Again, this is a very toxic kind of fluid or medicine, should be handled with very cautiousness at the hospital. Tacrolimus or Prograf drip can be mixed as 1 mg in 50 ml of D5W or normal saline. Tinactiplase or TNKS drip can be compounded as 50 mg mixed in 10 ml of sterile water, which comes in the kit, giving a concentration of 5 mg per ml, and the maximum dose for tinactiplase for a stroke patient is 25 mg. Tinactiplase drip can also be used at interventional radiology for thrombolysis purposes, and for those orders it can be compounded as 5 mg in 250 ml or 5 mg in 500 ml of normal saline bag based on the physician order. Tinactiplase can also be used as IV push over 5 seconds for STEMI patients. Tirofiban or Agrastat comes from the manufacturers as 5 mg in 100 ml of normal saline bag or 12.5 mg in 250 ml of normal saline bag. In both cases, the concentration is 50 microgram per ml. Valproic acid or valproate, brand name Depacon, doses up to 999 mg can be mixed in 50 ml of D5W or normal saline, and the doses of 1000 mg or higher can be mixed in 100 ml of D5W or normal saline. Vancomycin IV bags of 750 mg can be mixed in 150 ml of D5W or normal saline. 1 gram vancomycin can be mixed in 200 or 250 ml of D5W or normal saline bags. Vancomycin doses of 1.25 gram or 1.5 gram can be mixed in 250 ml bags, and vancomycin doses of 1.75 gram or higher, meaning 2 gram or 2.25 gram, should be mixed in 500 ml of D5W or normal saline bags. Vasopressin drip is another widely used drip at the hospital, and it can be compounded as 20 units in 50 ml of D5W or normal saline, giving a concentration of 0.4 units per ml. Vacurium drip can be compounded as 100 mg in 100 ml of D5W or normal saline, giving a concentration of 1 mg per ml. Vitamin K IV can be compounded as the dose in 50 ml of D5W or normal saline bags. Zidovudine drip sometimes is needed for not to transmit the HIV from mother to baby at the time of delivery, and that bag can be compounded as 1000 mg in 250 ml of D5W bags. Epidural drips, which is normally used at the labor and delivery unit for delivering mothers, can be compounded by using naropin and fentanyl. Naropin concentration is 0.2% and fentanyl 2 microgram per ml, and this is compounded in a 100 ml bag of normal saline. I hope you found this video valuable, and if you did so, please subscribe to the channel so that we can get more videos like this in future. And thank you.